This just in, we have breaking news. Former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell has passed away from complications due to COVID-19, according to a statement from his family posted on Facebook this morning. He was 84. We have lost a remarkable and loving husband, father, grandfather, and a great American, his family wrote, noting that he was fully vaccinated. Powell was a distinguished military soldier whose career started in Vietnam and spanned several Republican administrations. He was the first black national security advisor under Ronald Reagan's administration. He was the youngest and first African-American chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President George H.W. Bush, and then Secretary of State, of course, under George W. Bush. And, I should note, first of all, his family says that he was fully vaccinated. So it is, for older Americans, it's good to be vaccinated, and it very much is decreasing death and severe illness. But it is not a guarantee. I've actually, seen some of the data. Probably unvaccinated children are safer from the disease clearly than even vaccinated elderly people.
I think if an unvaccinated, 10-year-old or 12-year-old or younger gets COVID compared to a fully vaccinated 84-year-old, you have to be much more concerned about that.
Yeah.
About that 84-year-old.
Yeah.
When you see the numbers of vaccinated people who are still dying of COVID, and you dig deeper, you find that many of them are over 80 years old.
Yeah.
Go down further, a lot of them are 70 plus, 65 plus. It is still a very dangerous disease. What it goes to is that our therapeutics are not at a place where they're 100% yet.
Right.
The monoclonal antibodies have made tremendous strides. Merck has this pill that's on its way that they say will cut it by 50%, and that's hailed as a miracle drug. Well, kind of miracle works half the time. It's not a miracle worker.
Right.
Half is great, but that's not 100%.
Yeah, anything that gets the death rate down is great.
But it means it's still quite a deadly and serious disease that people need to be careful about.
Right.
Colin Powell, complicated and interesting life. It talked about how he started his career in Vietnam. He was actually in the Army division where that was responsible for the My Lai massacre. He talked about this a little bit in his memoir, but a report came to him that there had been something that ought to be looked at. He did a very cursory investigation. He later was questioned by the Inspector General, offered a little bit of information. There's no evidence that he actually knew the scope and the scale of that atrocity, but he knew that there were allegations that something extraordinary had happened there. He didn't really do anything different than anybody else in the command of that division did through this institutional cover-up of this massacre. But that is also how you move through the ranks.
Yeah.
You kind of look the other way when you hear things that you might not want to hear. He was always the inside man, the guy who always thought that whatever compromises he made were worth it because it would give him a chance to do the right thing.
Right.
No better example than that than the run up to the Iraq War.
And he was understood to be this kind of moderating influence on the direction of the Iraq War. He was skeptical of the idea that we should overthrow Saddam Hussein. He insisted that President Bush, go to the United Nations and plead this case. And then, and now,
to his eternal regret.
Right. Unfortunately, we kind of all agree. Interestingly, even people on the right now, Iraq was a terrible mistake. He was later, I think, skeptical. I think he had different things to say about staying in, about the troop surge, things like that. He at times seemed and publicly said he was doubtful that these efforts would work, and it was worth it. So certainly a complicated role that he played in this question.
Right. And he didn't believe that the intelligence argument that he was making before the world was the slam dunk that he thought it was. Yet he did it anyway because he felt like he was a loyal soldier.
Right.
The image of him kind of holding up these alleged weapons of mass destruction is iconic from that era. These artists.
There's a picture of him holding up anthrax too.
Right. And
remember that? Yeah.
Artist renderings of what these biological labs would look like if they existed. It was just a thoroughly grotesque display of propaganda, which was meaningless anyway, because Bush was going to war with or without the UN. Powell really wanted the UN along, didn't get him in the end. I mean, and it speaks to the resonance of that moment that this, and he always knew that would be the thing. Right, that he would be remembered for.
He was ahead of the curve in recognizing the kind of craziness of the Republican Party. It, endorsed Barack Obama. Was very critical of Trump. Obviously critical of January 6th. Those kinds of things.
And he also established the Powell doctrine out of Vietnam too. So the Powell doctrine was, don't get into a war that you don't know how to get out of.
Yeah,
and that was his lesson from Vietnam. A good lesson.
One he should have,
and one he actually tried to argue for in the lead up to Iraq. It also would have applied to Afghanistan. It's a good idea.
It is a good idea. We should try that. We should endorse this doctrine.
Yes, in honor of Colin Powell, let us endorse the Powell doctrine.
Absolutely. We'll have more Rising after this. Stay with us.